Welcome to the lab. This is the Big Scientist channel where we explore the why so you know how. Today, we are exploring the why behind silky smooth, sweet, nutty, and salty caramel sauce, so you know how to impress with this sauce in your own kitchen. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay up to date on all delicious science. Now let's get into it. So a caramel sauce is white sugar that is heated to around 340 degrees Fahrenheit. And at this temperature, the sucrose in the sugar breaks down and becomes a solution that turns a deep, dark brown, golden brown color and develops kind of these nutty, different flavors. Now, the method that we're using today is a wet caramel method. And this means that we're adding water to the sugar instead of just cooking the sugar in the pan, which is a dry method. We're adding water to the sugar to help the sugar dissolve and heat evenly across the sugar. Now, this does take a little bit longer than the dry method, but I find that it helps to heat the sugar again evenly, which decreases the amount of crystallization, and it does provide a little bit of a lighter caramel color, but I find this is an easier method for me at least. So a caramel is an oversaturated sugar solution. And when you have an oversaturated solution, a lot of times things like to fall out of solution. So in order to keep all the sugar inside the solution and avoid it from precipitating or in other words, crystallizing, we have to keep the temperature consistent across the entire process, as well as make sure none of the sugar crystals splash up on the sides of the wall of the pan, because when the sugar comes to a cooler temperature, it will crystallize. And then if that gets in contact with the solution, it causes a chain reaction that will cause precipitation throughout, which will give us a grainy caramel. So in order to prevent this crystallization from occurring in our caramel, we're going to need to convert what's called an invert sugar. An invert sugar is a syrup mixture made of glucose and fructose. And invert sugars retain more moisture and they're less likely to crystallize, and they're also much sweeter than regular sugar. So how do we create an inverted sugar? So the first thing we have to understand is that table sugar or granulated sugar is actually just crystallized sucrose, and sucrose is made up of glucose and fructose. And so we really just need to break that bond of sucrose bond and get our glucose and fructose free. So in order to do that, there's two different things you can do. You can keep your heat consistent, which will slowly break down that chemical bond, or you can add an acid. And in this case, we're actually going to add some lemon juice, which is our acid. And just a little bit of lemon juice will actually break the chemical bond, the sucrose bond, and disperses the glucose and fructose from that bond. And this, in and of itself, is creating invert sugar. And by creating this invert sugar, we're allowing the solution to be able to heat evenly and prevent crystallization. So right now I'm just stirring the sugar to try to get all the sugar incorporate in the water and to make sure it's getting heated evenly. And we're actually going to add in our lemon juice at this point so that we can go ahead and break some of those sucrose bonds and get our glucose and fructose free so that they can start assisting with creating an invert sugar. And I'm also keeping my heat very low. It's between about a 1 and a 2 on the stove. Just this is just to make sure that we're heating it slowly, and it's so that the heat is even and we don't heat it too fast so it doesn't burn. So here I'm just stirring in my lemon juice, and so it can be all incorporated and we can break as many of those bonds as possible to help create our invert sugar. So in order to keep the heat consistent and to also make sure that any crystals that do get on the side of the pan are washed back down, I like to use a lid, and this helps to it catches the water from the steam that's coming out of the sugar as it cooks, and it washes the sides of the pot down so that we don't really get any crystals on the side. And it also helps the heat to disperse evenly across the sugar as it's cooking. So I find that keeping the lid on and just not touching the caramel sauce as it cooks is actually a really effective method of getting your sauce cooked without crystallization and without any issues. Now, it is important to understand that there are different methods to making caramel sauce all across the internet. Um, and some of them actually will add in an invert sugar, and instead of just making it in the pot as you're making your caramel sauce like we're doing here. And invert sugars are like corn syrup. Um, they're solutions that are liquid by nature, but they're very sweet. So you will find a bunch of recipes like this, and they also are effective in reducing the crystallization. So here I'm just showing you what it looks like as it's cooking, going through the cooking process. As you can see, it just gets really clear and it just starts bubbling. And we just want to keep it at that low heat and keep it consistently bubbling until we see it to start to brown. I just want to take a moment to say, if you are enjoying this content and you like the science, understanding the science behind your favorite foods and how to make things work and what's actually going on chemically in your food, so that you understand how to adjust and how to use it to your advantage in different kinds of recipes and even create your own recipes, please go ahead and subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay up to date on all of the videos and science we have coming out. So now you can see it's getting browner, but I want a little bit of a deeper color, so I'm just going to continue to let it cook a little bit longer. And as you'll see that it starts to just get a little bit more brown. But this is the point where you really want to watch your caramel though, because it can go from a beautiful golden color to burnt really quickly. So just continue to watch it and make sure that you pull it off the stove, off the heat, before it gets too dark. So since we don't want to stir our caramel too much to prevent any splashing onto the sides and crystallization, what I like to do is I actually like to just swirl the pot a little bit to get the edges, so that the sugar solution around the edges doesn't get too burnt and it kind of incorporates it to the middle. Just a small swirl will do. So this is a pretty good color. This is what I'm looking for my caramel. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off the heat and just move it over to the side so we can continue to make the rest of our caramel sauce. So now that our caramel sauce is off the heat, I'm going to go ahead and add in my cream. And I've warmed this cream up in the microwave. If you add cold cream, it'll cause the caramel to seize a little bit more. So I find that if you warm your cream up first and just pour it in very slowly, small amounts at a time, and just stir, 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 it prevents it from seizing and getting hard, because you're not shocking the syrup as much when you're just putting in small amounts and stirring in your warm cream versus just tossing in some cold cream. It's going to really seize up because it's going to change the temperature drastically, and it's going to cause that sugar to solidify. So I find that if you just stir it as you pour it in, and you pour it in slowly, and you warm your cream, this is prevented. And the cream is really just adding a liquid back to our mixture, so that we are getting a more liquid caramel. So if we were to stop before we add the cream, we'd end up with once it cooled, it'd be a hard candy kind of caramel, a very hard caramel. But we want this to be pourable and spreadable and to be able to use it on different things. So I'm gonna add in the cream, and that's gonna help it to give it some moisture back and some creaminess, so that we can pour this onto different things like cakes, cookies, lattes, cinnamon rolls, French toast, really anything you can think of. Ice cream, you can pour this sauce onto. So I'm just gonna slowly add it in. As you can see, it bubbles up just because that heat difference is going to cause a reaction. It's gonna cause the cream to, some of the steam to be let out of the cream because it's so hot. So you're gonna see that bubbling, but again, if you stir and you add it in very slowly, it's not gonna overflow and you're gonna be able to avoid it seizing up. So now I have all my cream in, so I'm just gonna stir it until it's all combined and it's all incorporated into the caramel solution. Now, as you can see, it gives it a nice like lighter color. So now it's like this beautiful golden brownish color, and this is exactly the color I was looking for. So the last ingredient that I'm going to add is some butter, and this is going to give it some richness, and some of that fattiness from the butter is just going to give it a nice silky kind of taste and feel, and it's just going to give it a little bit more depth of flavor with the taste of the butter. So we're just going to add that in and just stir it up until it melts all the way through. Now, after you've gotten your butter melted in, you can stop here. And as your caramel cools, it's going to thicken and become a nice, thick, spreadable, pourable sauce. But myself, I love salted caramel, so I'm going to add some salt to mine. And it's just salt to taste. You can just add as much or as little salt as you want. And now I'm going to go ahead and let this cool. And like I said, as it cools, it's going to get thicker. It's not going to solidify, it's just going to get thicker. And we're going to have a nice, beautiful caramel sauce that we can pour over all types of things. here it is, the final result. Silky smooth, sweet, salty, nutty caramel sauce. Ready to pour over top of ice cream, cake, brownies, cookies, fruit, or just eat it straight out the jar. Whatever you want to do with it, it's going to be delicious. But don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment below letting us know how you like to use your homemade caramel sauce. And until next time, happy baking!